Have you ever wondered if you're doing too many or too few sets in your workouts? This is a question that haunts both beginners and experienced athletes. While some argue that more is better, others swear that very few sets are enough to maximize your results. Faced with such a huge doubt, there is nothing better than turning to science. If you've ever felt overwhelmed or, on the contrary, had the feeling that you could be doing more in your workout, this video was made for you. Before we dive into ideal numbers, we need to clarify an important point. Not all series are counted the same. There are three main methods for counting sets in a workout. Number 1, total method. In the total method, we count absolutely all sets performed for a muscle group, regardless of the type of exercise. This includes both direct and indirect series. For example, if you do 3 sets of bench press, which directly works the chest, 3 sets of crucifix, which is also for the chest, and 3 sets of triceps pulley, which works the chest indirectly, using the total method you would count 9 sets for the chest. This method tends to result in higher numbers, as it considers any and all work that affects a specific muscle. Number 2, direct method. In the direct method, we only count exercise sets that directly target the muscle group in question. Continuing with the previous example, using the direct method, you would only count 6 sets for the chest, 3 bench presses plus 3 crucifix sets, completely ignoring the 3 triceps sets. This method is more conservative and may underestimate the actual volume of work a muscle receives during training. Number 3, fractional method. The fractional method represents a compromise between the previous two. In it, we count each direct series as a complete series and each indirect series as a half series. In our example, we would have 6 complete series of direct exercises for the chest and another 1.5 series of the 3 indirect series for the triceps, totaling 7.5 series for the chest. This method attempts to balance the relative contribution of indirect exercises, recognizing that they generate stimulus, but not to the same magnitude as direct exercises. It is essential to be clear about which method we are using when we talk about training volume, as this significantly impacts the numbers. Most of the scientific studies that we will present to you use the direct or total method and rarely the fractional method. But after all, what does science say about the ideal number of series? Now that we understand how to count series, let's move on to scientific data. The literature on resistance training has evolved a lot in recent decades, and several studies have specifically investigated the relationship between series volume and results. One of the most cited studies in this field was conducted by Brad Schoenfeld and his colleagues in 2017. Researchers divided 45 trained men into 3 groups: a low-volume group, which did 1 set per exercise, a moderate-volume group that did 3 sets per exercise, and a high-volume group that did 5 sets per exercise. All participants trained 3 times a week for 8 weeks, performing 7 exercises per session. The results were enlightening. The group that performed 5 sets per exercise achieved gains in muscle mass, approximately 27% greater than the 3-set group and almost 40% greater than the 1-set group. This suggests a clear dose-response relationship between training volume and hypertrophy. However, when looking at strength gains, the differences between the 3 and 5-set groups were less pronounced, indicating that for purely strength-related goals, the additional benefit of very high volumes may be questionable. In 2019, Heselgrave and his team conducted an experiment with 49 young men with no experience in resistance training. Participants were divided into groups. The first performed 12 weekly series per muscle group. The second performed 18 weekly series per muscle group. The third performed 24 weekly series per muscle group. The study lasted 6 weeks and evaluated gains in muscle strength and size. Surprisingly, there were no significant differences in hypertrophy between the 18 and 24 set groups, suggesting a possible ceiling of benefits around 18 to 20 weekly sets for beginners. The researchers noted, however, that the group of 24 sets reported higher levels of fatigue and worse recovery scores, indicating that excessively high volumes can compromise recovery without offering additional benefits, which already breaks the idea of more is better. Now, an important aspect to consider is how ideal volume may change over time. Rodale and collaborators followed beginner men for 6 months, comparing the effects of 1, 3, and 5 sets per exercise. In the first 3 months, all groups showed significant and similar gains. However, over the next 3 months, the 3 and 5 sets per exercise groups continued to make progress. while the one-set group began to plateau. This suggests that while low volumes can be effective at the start of training, volume progression becomes increasingly important as we progress through our training journey. A meta-analysis conducted by Krieger analyzed data from 14 studies with a total of 203 participants. The conclusion was that multiple sets per exercise, such as 2, 3, or more, resulted in approximately 40% more hypertrophy gains compared to a single set. This analysis was one of the first works to challenge the one set to failure is enough paradigm, which had dominated some aspects of training in previous decades. Factors that influence the ideal number of series. Studies give us general guidelines, but it's essential to recognize that the ideal number of sets varies significantly based on some individual factors. The main ones are, number 1, training level. Individuals at different stages of training respond differently to volume. Beginners tend to respond well to low to moderate volumes, between 6 to 10 weekly sets per muscle group in the direct method. Cannon and Marino's 2010 study showed that beginners made similar gains with 6 and 9 weekly sets for quadriceps. In this group, which we call beginners, we consider those who have less than 1 year of training. Intermediates generally benefit from moderate volumes, around 10 to 16 sets per week. In this group, which we call intermediate, we consider those who have less than 1 to 3 years of training. Advanced players often need higher volumes, between 16 to 20 weekly series or more, to continue progressing. The study by Ostrowski and his collaborators in 1997 was one of the first to suggest that advanced athletes need at least 14 sets per week to maximize gains. In this group, which we call advanced, we consider those who have more than 3 years of training. Now we need to consider another very important factor, the muscle groups. Different muscle groups seem to respond better to different volumes. Larger muscles such as legs, back, and chest generally tolerate and respond to higher volumes, between 12 to 20 sets per week. Smaller muscles such as shoulders, biceps, and triceps tend to adapt well to more moderate volumes, around 8 to 14 sets per week. Calves and forearms. These muscles that are used constantly on a daily basis often benefit from higher volumes and greater frequency, between 14 and 20 sets per week. The distribution of volume throughout the week also significantly impacts the results, so we need to talk about the training frequency. With low frequency, that is, once a week per muscle group, very high volumes per session can compromise the quality of the last series and generate excessive fatigue. With a high frequency, such as 2 to 4 times per week per muscle group, we can better distribute the volume, maintaining the quality of each set and potentially improving recovery. Dankel and his colleagues in 2017 observed that distributing 18 weekly sets across 3 different workouts produced better results than concentrating the 18 sets in a single weekly session. Genetics and individual capacity for recovery. Perhaps the most important and least discussed factor is individual variability. Some individuals are high-volume responders, able to recover and adapt well to high volumes. Others are low-volume responders, achieving optimal results with fewer sets, and suffering from overtraining when volume is excessive. A study by Hubel and his collaborators in 2005 demonstrated a striking variation in response to the same training protocol. Some participants gained up to 58% strength, while others only 0 to 2%, even following the same program. Okay, it's already been scientifically proven that individualities can change everything. But then based on that, are there signs of inadequate volume? Be it a lot or a little? And the answer is yes, there are some indicators that we can observe. Signs of insufficient volume, very fast recovery, absence of delayed muscle pain, progression stagnates for long periods of time, such as 4 weeks or more, consistently short training sessions with little fatigue, feeling that I could have done more after most workouts, signs of excessive volume, chronically compromised recovery, and feeling tired even after days of rest, reduction in performance over the weeks, persistent joint pain, changes in sleep and appetite, decreased interest and motivation to train, symptoms of overtraining such as increased resting heart rate, irritability, and decreased immunity. Now that we know the theory and scientific data, how can we apply this in practice? Here are some evidence-based strategies for optimizing your training volume. First strategy, progressive approach. Instead of immediately adopting high volumes, consider a gradual progression. Start conservatively, starting with moderate volumes like 10 to 12 sets weekly for large muscle groups, Then try increasing 2 to 3 sets per week every 4 to 6 weeks, carefully monitoring results and recovery. Continue increasing until you identify the point where more sets do not provide additional benefits or are detrimental to recovery. Alternate periods of higher volume with periods of reduced volume to prevent adaptation and overtraining. In fact, the 2016 study by Pritchard and colleagues showed that this volume periodization approach resulted in 15% greater gains compared to maintaining the same volume constantly. Strategy 2. Smart distribution. The distribution of the series also deserves attention. Prioritize basic and compound exercises. Dedicate more sets to multi-joint exercises that recruit more muscle mass. Balance agonists and antagonists by maintaining adequate proportions between opposing muscles, for example 1 and 1 between chest and back, 3 and 2 between quadriceps and hamstrings. Also vary the distribution during the session. Put more sets on the muscles that are a priority at the beginning of the training when you are less fatigued. Strategy 3. Monitoring and adjustment. The most important aspect may be continuous monitoring. Track not just volume, but also the perceived quality of each set and your recovery between sessions. Also use girth measurements, progress photos, and strength tests to assess whether volume is getting results. Practical recommendations by objective. Let's translate all this information into practical guidelines based on specific objectives. For maximum hypertrophy, beginners, 8 to 10 weekly sets per large muscle group considering the direct method. Intermediate, 12 to 16 weekly series. Advanced, 16 to 22 weekly series. Ideally distributed over 2 to 3 sessions per week for each muscle group. For maximum strength, beginners, 6 to 8 weekly sets per muscle group. Intermediate, 8 to 12 weekly series. Advanced, 12 to 16 weekly series, focusing on higher intensity sets and fewer repetitions per set. For muscle maintenance during periods of restriction, approximately 1/3 to 2/3 of the volume used for hypertrophy. Beginners, 4 to 6 weekly sets. Intermediate, 6 to 10 weekly series. Advanced, 8 to 14 weekly series. Effective series and junk volume. An important concept that has gained prominence recently is the difference between effective series and junk volume. Basically, in this concept, effective series are those that they are performed with sufficient intensity, close to failure, with good technical quality, generating significant mechanical and metabolic stress. Junk volume refers to series that they are performed very far from failure and occur when the muscle is already excessively fatigued to respond adequately without contributing proportionally to the growth stimulus. Researcher Mike Israetel proposed that very high volumes often contain a significant proportion of junk volume. In his work, he suggests that for most exercisers, there is a maximum adaptable volume beyond which adding more sets brings no benefit and may even harm progress. This suggests that when counting series, we should consider not only quantity, but also quality. 10 effective sets will likely produce better results than 20 poor quality sets. Conclusion: an individualized model. After looking at all this evidence, it's clear that there is no magic number of sets that work equally for everyone. The ideal volume is highly individualized and must be determined through systematic experimentation and self-knowledge. However, we can establish some general guidelines based on current science. Number 1. Considering the direct method for most practitioners, a weekly volume of between 10 and 20 sets per large muscle group seems to represent an optimal range for hypertrophy. Number 2. Gradual volume progression throughout your training career is essential to continue evolving. Number 3. Spreading volume across multiple weekly sessions generally produces better results than concentrating all volume in a single session. Number 4. Cycling periods of higher volume with periods of recovery appears to be superior to maintaining the same volume constantly. Number 5. The quality of the series is as important as the quantity. We can highlight factors such as proximity to failure, technique, and mind-muscle connection. Number 6. Your own body's signals such as recovery, progression, motivation, and performance are the best indicators of whether your current volume is adequate. Remember, the ideal training is not necessarily one with more sets, but rather one that provides the necessary stimulus for adaptation while allowing adequate recovery. Finding this balance is a journey of self-discovery that continually evolves throughout your training life. If you liked it, be sure to check out the video where we talk about 11 common mistakes that people make and that throw their training in the trash. It's appearing right now on the screen. Thank you for watching this far and may God bless you, my friend.